Welcome. This is David Bowles, Human Meme. Today's topic, the blue pencil. A blue pencil, for those of us who unfortunately know what it is, and for those of us who fondly remember, a blue pencil is the concrete icon for a right intention that becomes corrupted as it goes bad. Now, please allow me to explain the history of a blue pencil. A blue pencil is associated with change, both arbitrary and mandatory, and a blue pencil is held, some say wielded, by someone with the title of editor. The editor can be working on text, or layout, or advertising. The blue pencil is found in the early days of print publishing, particularly newspaper publishing. And the reason the pencil was blue and not black or red was because the newspaper camera layout demanded the color blue, because a blue grease pencil did not photograph when the layout was getting ready for the printer. Anything blue, the color blue, was invisible in the printing process. So the editor, the one with the blue pencil, could mark up the layout while hot waxing the backs of the article pieces for layout on the page. And the editor wrote anywhere on the page, the layout page, using all sorts of blue lines and admonishments for the layout folk, and for the print house to follow. And so that blue pencil gained infamy by getting the message across, while also remaining invisible to the eye of the buyer of the newspaper and the reader in final production and distribution. Now, for writers, that blue pencil didn't stop working in the layout room. That blue pencil mentality was wielded by the editor on typewritten pages that were submitted for publication, and then roundly handed back to the writer, with blue notes scribbled all over the pages. And yes, particularly in the 1980s, when you were working in publishing, every article submitted for publication was first typewritten, yes, typed on a typewriter, by hands and fingers, and the article, the paper pages, were then submitted to the editor for the blue pencil revision. And then, after editorial review, your work was handed back to you, sometimes thrown back at you, the author, for revision and for retyping, and for perhaps a second and maybe even a third round of the blue pencil. And so, my human meme friend, as the old story goes, if you give somebody a hammer, if you give an editor a blue pencil, well, suddenly everything becomes a nail in need of striking, and everything becomes grammatically wrong and structurally wrong and demands a blue pencil fixing. And oh, that hammer will be used, and oh, that blue pencil will be drawing on a page, necessary or not. So both carpenter and editor may keep their jobs while making themselves look busy, hammering and crossing out things, genius things, to make themselves look busy. Now, some editors understood and do understand there is and was more value in not always using a blue pencil. while the majority of those imbued with the blue pencil power could not wait to attack every single little word to fit their sense of what was right, while not meting out the original intention of the author. And that is how newsroom fights begin. Over change, over addition by subtraction, over the arbitrary right of the blue pencil, over every other idea submitted for publication. Yes, editors love their blue pencil power, even if they don't have one, or no longer need one today. While we, the us, the writers, always tended to loathe anything associated with the blue pencil mentality and mendacity, our editors, to keep their blue pencil power alive, tended to use it against everything they wrote. Phone messages, meeting notes, love notes, markup syndicates, contract signatures, everything. Yeah. And that, my human meme friend, brings us to this moment. In this life, in the afterlife of the blue pencil, where revisions today are electronic and passive, and are now made more beautiful by decree, and all authors' submissions are wanting, and the idea of the blue pencil flows downward with the scratch of a thought against an overriding mediocrity in need of structuring and rethinking, thinking that adheres to an invisible intention of the blue pencil, still sharp, still alive, as an active threat to both hearth and home, and sometimes fame and well-being. But always, the blue pencil distrusts creativity and independence. So, as an editor, it is your job to be sensitive to the needs and wants of your publication, while also trying your best to preserve the intrinsic voices of your writers. Is it better to let the accent of the author speak through the words, even though you could blue pencil in some grammatical or syntextual changes that might make the piece a little more mainstream? Or is the better path one of avoidance of the blue pencil mentality? And maybe, just maybe, you would allow to let the writer's true voice and honest vision speak from the page, even if that writing is not absolutely 100% perfect in a classical publication sense. What is the job of the editor? Is the job of the editor to preserve the voice of the author, or to protect the integrity of the publication? You cannot be loyal to both. A few years ago, I was working on a book. It was a book about the internet age. And all revisions, editorial decisions, everything was electronic. And a lot of the work, the rework, was lost in the process. And this particular editor I was working with loved to add a trailing S to some words that I did not want appended with said S. Because, to my author's ear, an S sound is ugly And it's a bad way to end a word because the singular is more specific than the plural. And because the S is a hiss in the eye, mind, and throat. Maybe it's just my thing. And so why add such an ugly snake sound if you don't have to? Well, for that editor, for my editor, upward always became upwards in revision, and backward always became backwards in revision, editorial revision. And me, as the author, well, I let it go. After I asked why this was happening, and I was told I was wrong and she was right. And so I let it go. Even though the reason my editor was giving me was unconvincing. So I let it go for a little while. And then, as often as I could, I used upward and backward, S-less versions of those two words. I used them to keep my editor busy and engaged and on the lookout for those two red flag mistakes. And I did that to keep my editor out of the rest of my chapters on topics and words and phrases that really mattered to me. And yes, as I said, I let it go, sort of, because, well, who cares, really? And I suppose in some way that editor needed to feel effective and useful and had to employ a blue pencil mentality because if my editor's boss, the boss above her in the publishing chain of command, didn't see any blue pencil edits, theoretical blue pencil edits, then why were they paying my editor to edit me? Right? You get it. Yeah. And so it goes. And so, know your battles, and fight them like wars, and understand the intention of the weapon aimed against you. And draw your boundaries, and dig your trenches, make them all deep and keen and bright, and keep the faith every day with a backward but upward stroke of your resistance against the blue pencil hammer. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.